Welcome back to Echo Ridge, where today we're 100% going to make it to space. And look, I know I've said that before, and sometimes things come up and Drecos beat us to space, but this time we have no excuse. We have a rocket here that's filled with 150 kilos worth of steam, which gives it a range of 10 tiles. The small issue we're running up against is oxygen. Right now, our gas cargo canister only has 784 kilos. The good news, though, we can tell because of the fact that that gas cargo canister is actually taking in more and more oxygen, is our entire cabin is pressurized with 2 kilos worth of oxygen. Additionally, our docks are also full, and all the carbon dioxide from the earlier building has been scrubbed out. Thanks again to the wonderful gas rocket port unloader. So what's the holdup then? Well, it's the amount of oxygen that we have. We know that there are 2 dupes going on this mission. Each one of those dupes breathes 100 grams of oxygen per second. Doesn't matter if it's in the environment or from the oxygen mass stock, it's always going to be 100 grams per second per dupe. So if we take the total between the 2 dupes of 200 grams per second and multiply it times 600 seconds in a cycle, we then know that it takes 120 kilos worth of oxygen per cycle to keep those dupes breathing. Well, with only a backlog of 800 kilos, that wouldn't last them much more than 6.5 cycles. So we need to wait until the gas cargo canister is chock full of 3,600 kilos, because then the mission would be able to last 30 cycles, and that's not even counting all the oxygen in here. The issue is, the oxygen just doesn't flow very fast, because this pipe is at the very end of the run that's providing the duplicants oxygen for the colony. And considering our current spawn only has 2 electrolyzers, that is definitely the limiting factor. Okay, no big deal, just make a new spawn, such as a full Rodriguez. Well, the problem with that lies in the fact that we don't have any gold amalgam or gold. We could use steel, but we only have 5 tons of it. And if you remember, we don't have much iron to begin with, so every little bit of that steel is going to matter in the long run. At least until we get our space program going and we start getting a lot more of the renewable resources. Tuxedo is not the only one with a small oxygen problem. We're down to about 450 kilos worth of algae over here on Enverolin. Although we still have a few tiles here and there to dig up, which we are slowly doing in areas like this, they're soon going to need oxygen as well. So how do you build a spawn when you don't have materials that can't go over 75 degrees? Well, you build the spawn with materials that can't go over 75 degrees and then just make sure the whole contraption never goes above that temp. And we happen to have plenty of chill down here. The issue is, I really didn't want to start bulldozing through this area for the simple fact that I'd rather the bees be able to grab this uranium ore, because they're going to be much more efficient about taking it and turning it into enriched uranium. Whereas when our dupes bulldoze through it, we're going to lose 50% of the mass from the rip. But it doesn't appear like we can help that at this point, so here we go. Boy, are the dupes going to hate this one. Now, the general design idea for this oxygen machine is going to be the fact that it's not going to be a spawn. And I'm doing that to save space and heat. If all of our power can be generated, say, over here, we don't have to worry about melting too much of this biome, which is important for a couple of reasons. 1, it's going to be responsible for keeping the oxygen cool, but 2, we don't want to end up destroying these beta hives and betas. And a beta hive has a maximum living range of -0.1. The betas themselves are the same. So eventually, when we start eating through all that chill, we'll end up isolating this area to at least keep this beta hive alive and this beta hive alive. Another reason this is going to work out is because we're going to be running hydrogen in the very long run, thanks to the fact that we have Saturn critter traps and bee tinies. Once we're able to get in here and safely grab one of these bee tinies, we're going to be able to move it to a point where it'll be able to create another beta hive. We're then going to use the Saturn critter traps that'll eat the bee tinies as they come out of the beta hive, creating us a lot of hydrogen. That's in the pretty distant future, but that's sort of the reason why I don't mind the fact that this is not going to be a spawn itself. Now, in the process of creating this, we're going to have to move some of the power components around. The spawn itself is going to be powered by 2 large power transformers that are going to be fed off the main power spine. That, of course, is coming from our temporary power station. Yes, we're still on that party line. But remember, this is going to create a lot more hydrogen than this setup here. So we need to think about where we want to place these hydrogen generators to ensure that they're in the right spot as far as not generating too much heat, destroying the biome, but also conveniently located somewhere close to our power spine. And unfortunately, I think the answer is going to require the destruction of a little bit more uranium. Of course, these power plants can go up to 96 tiles, so we might be able to extend these once we get rid of this whole spawn here. This is going to be extremely tricky when we're transferring over from one spawn to the other, because the duplicants aren't doing that great on oxygen as is. Since we're going to be cutting it so close during the transfer from one spawn to the other, we're actually going to stop providing oxygen to the rocket up here. And that way we can wait until this whole area has plenty of oxygen, and then we'll be able to comfortably turn this one off and wait the few cycles that it's going to take for this one to fire up and start running normally. Speaking of power, we've gotten rid of this entire system here. Remember, this used to have the overflow hydrogen and a couple manual generators, and it was running a small grid connected to the desalinator, the rock crusher, and a few other things. Well, we extended that grid over to the main power spine now, but we still needed a place to send all that overflow hydrogen. So, in anticipation of extending this power station to include the 2 hydrogen generators for our new spawn, we just went ahead and put it there. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was that potential of cooling. This is a carbon dioxide geyser. It erupts with boiling carbon dioxide. Well, boiling carbon dioxide comes out at -55. And I've used these geysers in the past for some limiting cooling potential, although I don't believe they have the necessary thermal throughput to be able to cool an entire spawn indefinitely. But what it will do is help keep this area chill for much longer. The issue is there's 1,100 kilos worth of gas pressure in here. And if you've ever seen carbon dioxide completely snuff out a colony, that's exactly what would happen if we were to open this up. But right now, the geyser can't erupt because it's under such immense pressure. So I've got a really dumb idea. We're going to open it up. Except we're going to have a safety measure in place. We're going to have a carbon skimmer here that is going to slowly but steadily get rid of all this carbon dioxide here. At least until the point where the geyser is able to erupt again. It's being tied in directly with our water line that's going to the spawn, and with the polluted water line that goes all the way up here and gets connected to our water sieve from our bathrooms. So as long as after we open this up, no dupe goes in here, we should be okay. Right now it doesn't have power because it's connected to the large power transformer that is eventually going to take care of half of this spawn. And I haven't connected them yet because doing that is going to involve gutting some of our existing spawn. And although it's looking a little bit better, I just know how these things end up. Alright, well I suppose there's no time like the present, right? I will pause it to try to do this as carefully as we can. Disconnect oxygen there. Disconnect oxygen there. We're going to try to keep all this hydrogen in the pipes and send it off to the new hydrogen generators that are going to be connected into the main spine. And then we're just going to deconstruct everything in here as quickly as possible, starting with the wonderful oxygen lines. That way there's just a little bit more oxygen down here for the duplicants to be able to breathe. We're also going to disable both the electrolyzers and allow this gas pump to try to siphon up as much of the hydrogen as possible. To do that, we're just going to say, if it's above 0, go ahead. Let the record show it is cycle 329 when we disconnected the oxygen. We're going to try really hard to get it connected again real soon. Okay, so far so good. Gutting it has been going pretty easy. We only have a little bit of hydrogen that managed to escape. Not too bad. We're also going to flip some of these bridges. That way we can allow the rest of this hydrogen to drain into the hydrogen generator. What a jumbled mess. Who designed this thing? It looks like our new power stations will go out this far. So this is where we need to put the new door on both sides. And it looks like we might even have enough room to put 2 hydrogen generators, which will give us 4 total hydrogen generators. Update at cycle 330, everything's going okay, except for the fact that our main colony has no more power because we ripped out the hydrogen generator that was providing it all. Lucky for us, we have this little guy right here, so that shouldn't be too bad of a run. It wouldn't be such a big deal, but the water siev's not running, which means all the polluted water's backed up and no one can use the body. And yet, they don't care. Because as we can see, none of this work is being done on the copper wire. despite it being at a priority of 6. I am proud to report that main power is back online and switched over to the main power grid, and no one peed their pants. All this new construction has drained our copper supplies once again, so we're going to ask the good dupes over on Enverland to send over some more. Even though we haven't done any digging in quite some time, we still have 95 tons of it, with plenty more deposits where that came from. Rounding into cycle 331, and things are starting to not look great. We have most of the hydrogen lines in, although we are still cleaning up some of them. And yes, I know they're full of junk right now, but we really don't have the time to do it the right way. So instead, we're just going to let it go full bore and then repair what damage was caused. The beginning of the oxygen pipes are going in, although they're pretty full of carbon dioxide right now, because I was trying to let it vacuum out a little bit so it'd be easier to stand up, but I don't think we have time for those sort of pleasantries. Let's just let it all flow, shall we? It's still all full of junk, but the important thing is we have oxygen flowing again, even if it is just one pipe full. I'm getting there. And I regret to inform you that the save build bug is back. The pipes are still a little wonky, but the important thing is we have 3 gas pipes, mostly full of oxygen, and everything seems to have worked itself out. We have a perfect equilibrium. The Atmos sensors are set on the standard 250 and 450. The only issue I'm trying to figure out is if the 4 hydrogen generators are going to be enough to drink all of this hydrogen. Right now, they're set on an automation wire with a battery that's set at 9070. But we're also using the overflow system that when this gets backed up too far, a gas pipe element sensor detects the hydrogen and forces all 4 hydrogen generators to turn on. And so far, we're just not using enough power. It is still flowing 100%, and we're not seeing any more hydrogen inside of our oxygen lines, but that's a little too close for comfort. And part of the reason why is because each hydrogen generator is producing 1200 watts worth of power. I mean, these batteries aren't even budging. And we have a thermal aqua tuner and a metal refinery going. The temperatures are still great. The oxygen's coming out of the SPOM at around 3 degrees, and by the time it starts entering the base, it's at 4. And even these side legs are sitting at 12 and getting all the way up to 16 before their last vent. Needs to say, I think we're going to be just fine on thermals for quite some time. Now, we are feeding oxygen to our rocket. It's just going to be very slow until we get to the point where we have a lot more pressure in here. Because the rocket is literally last in line for oxygen, it's going to take a little bit. But since we have some time to wait, let's bust this thing open, huh? That'll be a good idea. Everything's ready. It has the water sitting in the insulated pipes. Our polluted water line is ready to receive. Now, Dave Hammer and Eric W. are not going to enjoy the popped eardrums, but hopefully they can run before it happens. No, that didn't work. And very quickly, we will lock this door, because it didn't take but a second for the carbon dioxide here to get over 3 kilos. Now, it'll take this carbon skimmer a little while, but eventually it will eat through all this carbon dioxide. Because I'm sure some of you are curious, the carbon dioxide that the carbon skimmer can chew through is 300 grams per second, which means in a full cycle we can get rid of about 180 kilos. So we'll end up checking back here in probably about 100 cycles. Hopefully by then, the carbon dioxide geyser won't be overpressured and we'll be able to dump some of its chill back into the environment. In the meantime, while we wait for all that oxygen, let's go ahead and do some more picking up. And we're also going to check in on DK Oz and Doritos P over on Enverland. To start off with, they're doing okay on oxygen, but they're down to about 9.3 kilos worth of algae. And there's only a little bit of algae still hanging around. And everybody knows I can't touch the island, so that algae is there to stay. So I think we'll actually be able to help them out by tying in the home colony's oxygen through the supply teleporter input. And then all we have to do is add a few gas vents and plug right into the supply teleporter output. And since there's only 2 dupes on here right now, we don't even really have to worry about the impact that'll have on our oxygen supply at the home colony. It looks like we're starting to get ahead of the power curve as far as the hydrogen goes. What I'd really like to do is just add some more hydrogen generators. Unfortunately, we are maxed out on these power plants, so unless I wanted to get rid of some of the coal power plants, that's not really going to work. And we don't want to get rid of the coal generators because eventually the SPOM is going to catch back up. And what I mean by that is the entire colony is going to be filled up with oxygen that we're no longer going to be producing at 100%. But you can see that these gas pumps have been running pretty much 100% in the past few cycles. Hence the reason we have 3 full pipes of oxygen. I suppose we do have 2 full pipes out here, so maybe I'll just temporarily disconnect these lines here, so that way all the oxygen can be prioritized for the rocket. There we go, that's much better. And that way, when the rocket is finally able to take off, we can plug all those lines back in, and the SPOM can take as long as it needs to produce the oxygen to fill this area. But you can tell from the nice fluffy clouds, it's doing a great job already. Remember when I told you everything was just going wonderfully? Yeah, I was wrong. Apparently the chill's not able to come in quite quick enough to keep up with the heat being generated by the SPOM. So I think we're actually going to have to wrap some of this water around to cool off the SPOM a little bit. And since we're going to want the water to be a little bit colder, we're going to turn some of these insulated pipes into standard pipes with the intention of it cooling down the water enough but not freezing it. And then we're going to bring it in, circle it around the SPOM, and then feed it to the electrolyzers. Hopefully this works. On the plus side, we no longer have a hydrogen backup. Alright, this is pretty neat. The water's coming in at 18 degrees, and by the time it goes through the last electrolyzer in the chain, it's actually still at 18 degrees. Because it's picking up so much chill here at the bottom, it doesn't really end up heating up. So for right now, I'm going to call this fixed. I'll let you know if it breaks again, but I think this solution will work. If you noticed before, it was also everything here in this corner that overheated. It was probably because I used insulated tiles on this side, and it's a little warmer over here than it is, say, down here. That could have been the difference. Also, while we're waiting on the oxygen to fill up, we've loaded up the rocket with 100 kilos worth of berry sludge. I'm not predicting that we're going to need much over there, but we're still going to put some materials inside the rocket. To start off with, we're going to need some dirt. That way the duplicants can change out the outhouse. I'm not too worried about germs, because as you can see, there's 32 rads just continuously nailing the outhouse, which is pretty much killing all of the surface germs. We'll start off with 500 kilos worth of dirt, and then I'm going to throw in a little bit of sedimentary rock, maybe a little bit of copper ore, and what little refined metal we can spare. By the way, I'm happy to announce that this Thermo Aqua Tuner Steam Creation Sleet Wheat farm system is still working flawlessly. I have it sort of automated to the fact that I don't even have to touch it. Whenever there's more than 15 kilos worth of steam pressure in here, the steam attempts to fill up the rocket. If the rocket's full, it'll just bypass and go into the gas vent. And once it gets below that mark, because this Atmos sensor is set on 20 kilos and there's no more water in here, a little bit of water will be allowed to bypass, and it'll be just in time to be able to cool down the Thermo Aqua Tuner. I'm so confident in this system that I don't think I'm going to touch it when we do end up unlocking the other 2 saltwater geysers and we end up expanding the Sleet Wheat and Berry Blossom farm. Because I think this Thermo Aqua Tuner can handle it all and not even come close to overheating in this system. People always ask me why I don't use these gas cargo canisters more often. This is the reason why. It just takes entirely too long to fill them up with oxygen. You'd almost be better served taking the gas cargo canister to one of the gas asteroids and having it filled up that way. Because at 1 kilo per second, which is the max amount that one pipe can hold, it just takes forever. And at last, we have our 30 cycles worth of oxygen. And what's funny is this mission's only going to take 1 dupe, so we actually have enough for 60. But I'd rather get it full now instead of having to do it later anyways. Why put off till tomorrow what you can do today? We're going to go ahead and crew up Angry Forest. We have our 2 rovers modules that are ready to deploy. And this first mission's just going to be a drive-by, dump rover, and leave. We're going to fly through here, dump 1 rover off, go to the next hex over, dump another rover off, and then come right back. It's going to be a great test flight for old Angry Forest. Now the steam engine has a range of 10 tiles, which is plenty for what we're asking it to do. It's going to be 2 tiles out, 1 tile over, and then 2 tiles back, for a total range of 5, making sure the launch checklist is good. And before the rocket can have its maiden voyage, we need to rename it. And without further ado, the ESS Slow and Steady is ready to go. We will acknowledge the warnings, and then begin the launch. And this is going to be the first launch that we've had in a long time, that apparently the rocket's going to go all the way up and out of the screen. Absolutely marvelous. As exciting as that was, we were given 2 notifications. 1 good and 1 bad. I was very excited to see that we got a colony achievement, because we just launched a dupe into space for the first time. But then for some reason, Angry Forest didn't use the potty. I know we've already cleaned it. I think it has something to do with when it was grounded. I was asking him to empty it because I wanted them to have a nice fresh outhouse before they went on their space mission. Needless to say, having sopping wet feet and peeing their pants is not the greatest way to start off on a space mission. Sorry, buddy. Maybe Angry was just really slow at cleaning, and we took the rocket off before they finished, because wow, was it taking them a long time. Now for the good news. Space race. Launch your first rocket into space. A short flight later, we are in orbit of Fergoni, and we'll drop off one rover. Oh, this is interesting. We have some water coming out through here, which means this is probably cold and melting, which sort of has me worried about an abyssalite break of some sort. But we want to put Rover where they can get the maximum amount of visibility as possible, because unfortunately, all this is granite. Rover can't dig through granite. They can dig through igneous rock, though. But that would only give them visibility over here. Of course, it looks like it'd be problematic landing here anyways, because I don't think that's a clear path down. So maybe we have to land here, and then use what igneous rock we can to build a ladder system down and over. Let's do that. Actually, Rover thinks they can land right there. Now I kind of want to do this for science. Let's see what happens. Is it going to destroy the granite on the way down? I don't know. Nope, just passes right under it. That's convenient. We'll have Rover deconstruct Rover's lander here, and then start coring out an area where we might be able to put a rocket platform. And there went all of our steel. Bad Rover. Good to know. Rover can't mop. I did this on purpose because I want to put a manual airlock down. That way the duplicants have some sort of oxygen. Because remember, we're going to have to land a dupe here in an oxygen mask and have them build a rocket platform once we figure out which planetoid we want to land on. Alright, I've queued up plenty for Rover to be able to do. So now we can head over to Eidolon and drop off the next rover. Alright, I'm genuinely confused on which achievement this is. Anyone's guess at this point. 351 cycles. We didn't do anything new with the rocket. I have had a lot of idlers, so maybe this is the one where more machines did the work? No, down the hatch. Produce 10 tons of refined metal by ranching smooth hatches. The one I was thinking about was easy living. Have auto supers complete more deliveries to machines than duplicates over 5 cycles. So it looks like we no longer need a smooth hatch. Thanks, buddy. We're still waiting for the slow and steady to get over to the next planetoid. So checking on Rover's progress here at Fergoni, we're able to see a lot more of the planetoid, but I don't see any Drecos, nor do I see any Thimbleweeds. It is supposed to have a jungle biome. It could just be a very small jungle biome, and there may not be any Drecos in it if it's kind of small. Looking at this planetoid, we can see how big it is by using a dig command and seeing how far it goes. This is the size of this planetoid. So I'm hoping Rover's going to be able to tell us a lot more before they end up shutting off. You brought your spare battery, right, Rover? I chose the ladder to go down through here. That way we do have access to this part here, because that's where the steel fell. And if we do end up building the rocket platform here, we're going to need that 400 kilos worth of steel. Our rocket is now in orbit of Eidolon, so we have a pretty good visibility of this surface as well. We have sandstone and sand, more sandstone, more sand. Nothing that Rover's really going to have a problem with. I do see some balm lilies and pinch of pepper plants, which tells me there's probably some Drecos nearby. But then again, they're covering the entire top of this planetoid. So I suppose we'll just land Rover at the deepest part. By the way, Angry Force has been using the bathroom for several cycles now. And look at that, not a single germ. I tell you what, I'm never putting a sink back in another rocket. Here comes Rover 2. Or maybe we should call this one Fido. And look at this. We found ya. You can't hide from us forever, Dreco. Unfortunately, this planetoid is otherwise a dumpster fire, and it's going to be much more difficult because there's no oxygen around here for us to land next to. There is some early algae, but I can't imagine the duplicant setting up an oxygen diffuser and some power before the rocket even lands. Over on Fergoni, this rover has reached a point where they can't go any further because of the granite in its way. Trying to find out if there's other ways to get around without running into granite, and I think this may be another path here to at least open up some avenues. But this entire planetoid has a big old stripe of granite going across the top of the planetoid, sort of preventing Rover from going too much further. I suppose there is this spot here. Back on Eidolon, We have found a lot of iron ore. That's at least somewhat hopeful. But without atmo suits, that's going to be awfully tough to core out. There is a lot of igneous rock, though, and that'll be helpful in feeding all the stone hatches, because we're down to 55 tons worth of granite. Now, don't worry, we have a backup. We have some sedimentary rock, almost 300 tons of it. But still, with Angry Forest mission complete, they can now head back home, where we are going to continue to watch the two rovers, see what they can find in these planetoids. I knew Angry Forest had made it home because I heard the scalding message. I need to remember not to let them out until after the steam goes away. Some of you had made mention about the fact that the rocket was so close to our colony. The rocket exhaust comes off at around 3 wide and goes down, I think, 7 or 9. So as long as you have vacuums in there and it's not actually heading into any sort of environment, you don't really have anything to worry about. The steam itself is not going to make it past the obsidian tile. In fact, it's the reason why I built the rocket here, because it's also going to give us another spot to put a rocket here and here. Well, I think the seed sort of made up its mind for us. Over here on Fergoni, Rover has done a great job. We've managed to get all the way down here to the frozen core. And we can tell it doesn't go much further than that. And I believe this is supposed to be the jungle biome, but I don't see any Dreco. So I don't think we're going to be going here first. Eidolonen, though, has our Dreco, and it's conveniently located too. Now, we don't have any oxygen up here, but I did find a nice oxygen cavern down here. That'll sort of help. I also had Rover build a manual generator, an oxygen diffuser, and a battery, because there's plenty of algae here. So worst comes to worst, and we're not able to build the rocket platform as quickly as we'd hope, whoever we drop off on the planetoid can put some algae in the diffuser and get some oxygen going for themselves. Now, Rover here still has 72 kilojoules, so we're going to put him to work, loading up all the igneous rock and everything else we want to take off this planetoid inside these storage bins, starting with a bunch of this iron ore. Absolutely. And then maybe while the duplicates are here, we'll be able to tap into some of this granite too, because this planetoid is full of it. Not to mention, it also has an oil biome. I've asked Rover to go ahead and dig up the sporkids so we don't have to deal with that when we get here. But unfortunately, because it's an oil biome, it's a little warm, and there's a solid abyssalite break right through here. Luckily, there's some chill coming from here, hopefully fending off some of this heat. But right now, it's still over 80 degrees in here, so our dupes will not be able to come down here. That does it for today's episode. Let me know in the comments below what else you think we should be getting off of this planetoid, because I'm excited to strip it right down to its core. I hope you enjoyed this episode, so until next time, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.